It's 4:30. Are we okay with the video? Yep, okay. I'd like to call to order FLCC board meeting, and I'd like to immediately turn it over to Trustee Cushman for the Education and Planning Committee meeting.
Thank you, Chairwoman Geis. So call to order the Education and Planning Committee meeting at 4:31 p.m. And initially want to request if there's any changes or additions or edits to the meeting minutes from December 7th. Easy for me to say. Anybody have anything there? Okay, we'll move on. With the enrollment update, Dr. Urbatus.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. And let's hope it is a Happy New Year. So you have in your packet the enrollment update for winter and spring as of December 16th. And I will provide numbers as of December 30th, since 2 weeks have passed since the information was provided in your packet. So winter session 2023 headcount is up 2.2%, 2.0%. And winter session classes began on December 27th. So that number is pretty final. FTE is flat, comparatively flat with last year at being down 0.2% for winter. Any questions with that before I move on to spring? Okay. So spring headcount is down 2.3% in comparison to the decline of 1.8% from December 16th. And FTE is down 2.7% in comparison to the decline of 2.3% from December 16th. So not a lot of shift in FTE and a slight shift in headcount. We have slightly over 2 weeks to go before the start of classes on January 23rd. So in February, I will provide you with pretty much initial numbers for spring after the semester begins. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Urbatus. Moving on to student success on-campus internships. Ms. Cunningham.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to attend the Board of Trustees meeting and for the opportunity to share information on the program coordinator assistant internship project. And this project is a shared effort between FLCC program coordinator and the Office of Applied Learning. First, I'd like to thank Patty Rockwell, the Environmental Conservation Law Enforcement Program Coordinator, for creating the concept and for reaching out to the provost and the Office of Applied Learning for their support in making this a reality. Patty created the concept as a way to connect and actively engage enrolled students in the process of identifying meaningful outside of the classroom applied learning activities that will enhance their student experience. And these activities could center around further career exploration, transfer options, or specific occupational interests. And interns could also provide support and a student perspective at recruitment events and also plan welcoming events for new students to the program. The student intern primarily would act as a liaison or connection between the program coordinator and currently enrolled students. And to give you a brief bit of history, Patty hosted and piloted the first program coordinator assistant internship in spring 2022. And Patty's student intern, Sam, assisted with coordinating a full slate of Labor Day events, including a canine and a drone demonstration. He also coordinated throughout the semester fitness sessions designed for students entering law enforcement careers. Sam participated in and contributed to the program's Spring 22 Advisory Committee meeting to provide feedback on his internship experience. The Office of Applied Learning provided support to the pilot internship by identifying best practices for hosting an intern and for coordinating the logistical aspects of the internship process. And we're happy to share that for the 2022-2023 academic year, funds were provided for 10 program coordinator internships, and students selected for the internships will receive a $500 stipend upon completion. Just to give you some idea of how we introduced the idea, early in fall 22, Patty and I sent a letter outlining the project and met with department chairs to introduce the program coordinator assistant internship. Department chairs in turn went back to the department meetings and encouraged any interested program coordinators to apply. Patty created a simple application process. She created a Google Docs spreadsheet where interested coordinators could add their information and share a brief synopsis of their internship plans. And then coordinators were selected on a first come, first served basis. Program coordinators presented some very innovative and exciting proposals. And I'm just going to share a couple of those. One was a mini career and transfer fair for their students, a transfer voices event, which would include past graduates who went on to four-year programs coming back and sharing their experience. Student outreach through ambassadorship and having interns provide assistance with demonstrating counseling skill techniques for some of the social science programs. And also lastly, support with local high school and middle school recruitment events. And these are just to name a few. To orient program coordinators as internship hosts, Applied Learning scheduled individual meetings to review the internship packet and to answer any questions coordinators may have on hosting an intern. And a copy of that packet was provided to you with the presentation materials. The next step was for program coordinators to identify a student for the internship opportunity, and I'm happy to say that at present, 10 internship slots have been filled. The easiest way to explain the details of how the program coordinator internships work is through defining the roles of the student, the program coordinators, and applied learning. The student agrees to complete 35 hours over the course of the internship period and complete all onboarding materials required by HR. To complete a learning agreement with their program coordinator and to identify specific goals for their internship. To provide outreach to students in their degree program to gauge interest for further events and activities through focus groups, surveys, or whatever the coordinator and the student feel would be appropriate. And then finally, to develop and implement these activities that align with those identified student interests. The program coordinator role is to assist the student in aligning activities and events to the FLCC values of vitality, inquiry, perseverance, and interconnectedness. To orient the student to the program, the department, and other faculty they'll be working with, and to meet with their intern on a routine basis to provide guidance and supervision. And lastly, to assess the student's progress in meeting these internship goals. Applied Learning facilitates the intern onboarding process in conjunction with HR and completes the personal service contracts, conducts mid-semester meetings with program coordinators and interns, and continually provides any support that's needed. Finally, they assess the internship process for success and areas for improvement and document progress through ongoing evaluation and feedback. Here are the 10 programs currently taking part in the Program Coordinator Assistant Project. Humanities has 2 programs, 4 programs from social science, 3 from environmental conservation and horticulture, and 1 program from health science and human performance. The program coordinators and interns will have ongoing support and guidance from the Office of Applied Learning throughout this project. And this will include an orientation and a reflective process for both the coordinators and the interns. And this slide provides a timeline for these events. So early in the spring, I'll meet with coordinators to exchange ideas, to have a kickoff event, to share internship plans and to review best practices. Mid-semester, I will meet with interns and their corresponding coordinators to check in and make sure things are on track. And in late spring semester, we will have a culminating event, a celebration of accomplishments, and we'll do an evaluation of the experience. So I'd like to express my thanks to the college and to the provost for their support of the Program Coordinator Assistant Internship Project and for their help in making these internship opportunities a reality. Thank you. Anybody has any questions?
Do the program coordinators get a stipend?
No, the students.
The students will, but
Yeah. Yeah, they were very excited about the prospect of getting additional help. So I think that's what they're doing is their stipend.
Yeah.
So,
okay, thank you.
anything else I can answer?
The only other question I would have is are there plans to track and evaluate how well the students have done post-graduation?
Not at this point, but that's an excellent idea. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your time.
We have 2 resolutions to review. Ms. Kim?
Good evening. I have 2 resolutions before you. The first one is to rectify an error from the December meeting. We inadvertently left out one of our faculty members for his second probationary year. Truly not a reflection on him, but simply a human error. Nicholas Bargnoli, I'm presenting to you for recommendation for a second probationary year here at FLCC. He's doing a fabulous job. Any questions on that? Okay. On the second resolution before you is approval of the LPN certificate program. This has grown out of a need for healthcare professionals in the community. And we are poised at this time to offer such a program with our beautiful new nursing facility. The program will work as a bridge between our CNA program and our RN program. Students will take 36 credit hours for the certification, taking basic courses like anatomy and physiology 1 and 2, English, psychology, and 4 semester sequence of licensed practical nursing. When they are done and graduate, and get their LPN licensure, 14 of the credits that they take will automatically transfer into the RN program. Once they do that, or because of that, that really gives them an advantage, or I should say an incentive to enroll in the FLCC RN program because of the transfer credits. They would start in the fall semester and go in the CNA, in the LPN program, start in the fall semester and would go through one academic year plus one summer in order to achieve their certification. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah,
Yeah, I have two. One is, where else is the LPN course offered in this area? Geneva,
it's Finger Lakes College of Nursing
which is,
in Geneva.
that's,
Yes. Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES, I believe, offers one. Rochester Regional Health, I believe, offers one as well.
and does they get the credits can be moved in, but they have to be accepted into the RN program?
Yes, they would come in as accelerated students during the winter semester. So they come in the spring, or now, because we're a year-round program, they would come in at either time. However, they would have to take a bridge course. Let's assume they're coming in the spring as done in the past. They would take a bridge course during the winter session along with one pharmacology course, and then start as a second semester student in the spring semester and complete their RN program after 3 semesters.
But they have to be accepted.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, they will have to apply.
Okay.
Is this a daytime program? Is it a full-time
It's going to
program?
be it's full-time. I assume someone could take a part-time. I don't know why they would, but they could. It's going to be day and evening.
Andy?
No, I think the credit, is this course, would this be like TAP eligible for students? Are there, any of those benefits to them?
If they're enrolled full-time, I'm not a financial aid person, but my understanding is if they're enrolled full-time, they can, Carol might be able to answer that.
Okay, repeat that?
With these, this is a high need, but not for credit. Is it TAP eligible going forward, do you?
This is going to be a credit bearing program.
Yes.
So they will get credits,
Yes.
credits all the way through. So, yeah. so
Yes,
so they would
They
be
would be eligible to
Okay.
submit the FAFSA.
great,
Yes, it is great.
great. Other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And to our strategic thought presentation, we have a facilities master plan, and I believe we have some steam gas.
So we've been asked to give a detailed presentation associated with where we are in the facility master plan. As you all know, we've had lots of conversations about it, and over the last 3 or 4 months, we went through the RFP process. We reviewed the proposals, which was a separate committee we interviewed, and now we have Labella. Jerry DeRomanis is the leader of the group, if you will. He and Barbara presented to the Master Plan Steering Committee on December 19th. And I was asked that they come back and present to all of you. So it's somewhat of a detail. It's where we are and where we're going. So thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Okay, while she's pulling that up, thank you, everybody, for having me here today. As Kathy mentioned, today's presentation will be an expedited version of our master plan committee presentation, really geared to kind of give you an idea of the outline of our process. We just started this right after the holiday, right after Thanksgiving, hit the ground running with a kickoff meeting, our master plan committee meeting, as well as a tour of your facility here. Next steps certainly be touring all of the other facilities and really wrapping our arms around all the previous work that was committed or completed prior to our master plan starting. Wrap our arms around that and jump off, hit the ground running, with all of our new research and analytics. Full screen. Perfect. So I do want to start out with the objective and the goal. And as you guys read that, as we kind of look at the objective of the presentation or objective of the master plan, what we are looking for is to really create a study that will work as a tool for you moving forward. We are looking at a 5 to 10-year range for the master plan study itself, and really try to look at how the facility has evolved over time, both at this location and all of your other locations, and really wrap our arms around the changing academic and community vision of education. That's going to be critical and paramount. The pandemic certainly has impacted education, how we deliver it, how students receive it. And so embracing that paradigm shift and trying to help understand how the facility will grow and adapt to that is really the underlying mission of the master plan as we move forward. So a quick update that I kicked off here with, from a timeline standpoint, we did start shortly after Thanksgiving. We did a full architectural and MEP facility tour of the main campus. As I had mentioned, we will proceed with all the other campuses and locations after this. We had a master plan committee meeting, which is this presentation.
Website.
And so the main task will be data and info gathering, of course, drawing, acquisition, establishing base plans that we'll use for our diagramming and analytics, as well as confirming project scope as we move forward. So the one big thing with master planning in general is this is a fluid process. The process will evolve over time as we engage both here, the Board of Trustees, our master plan committee, as well as all the stakeholders as we move forward and meet with all the focus groups. Full screens. So I don't want to go through each line of this chart, but we did submit a schedule. Really from a high level, as you do look at it, this Gantt chart shows each one of our components, which I'll go into in a second, how they overlap with each other with constant work and intermittent work. As I mentioned, this is a dynamic process, not a linear process. So from a takeaway standpoint, as we look at our overall schedule, that's how this project will operate. From a high-level bulleted standpoint, the majority of our work will occur from an analytical and data gathering standpoint. Analysis standpoint will occur between November and March. As you can see, the bullet points on the left are really heavily focused on demographic analysis, looking at the facilities, doing a full MEP analysis, as well as architectural inventory analysis of your facility, looking at IT, energy modeling, and then we'll start to formulate some of our preliminary findings. Most importantly, our focus groups will occur in February. That's where we will engage all the constituencies, as well as looking to engage the student body to try to get feedback from all the smaller groups, and then we will distill that feedback, bringing it back to the master plan committee as we develop recommendations. In April will be the first time that we come to the table with our findings. So that will be a presentation to the master plan committee, again, with our findings, our initial analytics, as well as looking to refine between April and August those analytic findings, taking that feedback and taking a step further with it. We will develop our recommendations and create a draft report, which we're looking to present in August. Between August and October is when we would look to incorporate feedback and then issue a final report towards that October, September, October timeline. So quickly going through some of those bullet points on the schedule. So we have 3 parts as we kind of unravel master planning. So our approach to master planning is really divided into 3 separate sections. The first one being an inventory analysis. What that really means is that we're going to hit the ground with a demographic analysis, looking at the area, your student body, the areas in which you reside for all of your locations. Doing a deep dive in terms of the jobs as part of the total community environmental look at where the campuses are and where the student body is graduating into. So we look at who the students are, where they're coming from, graduation rates, what to expect, as well as following the jobs, looking at the job market, look at the evolution there in order to help project. We will also be doing a full facilities assessment. A lot of this has been done in the past, and this is a jumping off point for us, gathering and wrapping our arms around all the work that has been done prior, as well as looking for holes to really kind of look at a comprehensive picture of what that means and what the facility needs moving forward. Space allocation is trying to understand the evolution of the campuses, the buildings over time. Certainly as, you know, let's say this building was built, there's a lot of backfilling that occurred. So trying to understand, say nursing would be a good example, the new construction that's occurring there. But what happens as people move around? What we see is kind of an image on the right there, a fragmentation that occurs within existing facilities. And so a lot of times, master planning is really an unraveling and understanding the shell game of those moves while we backfill and kind of optimize the facilities, as opposed to just recommending carte blanche new construction. Typically, that's more cost effective, is a better ROI for the campus itself. So that's usually where we start. We will be looking at the site as well as we'll talk about CMAC in a second. Renewable energy signage. Signage is something that is very important to us from a wayfinding standpoint. How do we arrive from the major arteries? How do we find the campus? Where do we park on campus? How do we get students to the front door? And how do we get students to either the one-stop shop or to where they need to be in the building? It's very important, especially at the community college level, to make sure that that is very flawless. We want to remove barriers as much as possible in order to increase efficiency for both the students and the academic institutions. IT is another one. As the facility grows, and especially with COVID and remote learning, hybrid learning, high flex situations, we do want to help you guys wrap your arms around the IT infrastructure as well as the head-end IT components to help you understand that roadmap relative to the 5 to 10 years of implementation. Part 2 and 3 are kind of quicker to go through here. Part 2 is really the creation of the report. The graphics, the understanding, being able to deliver what we're seeing and what we're recommending in a concise way will be very important. We are very graphic heavy in how we deliver that, from campus diagrammatics graphics to the analytical graphics. So you will get that as part of this master plan. Of course, presentations like we're making today, as well as the master plan committee and all the way down the line, are integrated into our scope of services. And then when all is said and done, and when you guys are happy and approve the master plan, part 3, the environmental review, the secret process will be us working with the county to get that in place so that you guys can move forward with the master plan implementation. We did put together this facilities matrix, and that kind of gives you kind of an at a glance look at each facility and the bulk of the work associated with, on the left column are the part 1 components. And as you move across the top are each one of your locations from Canandaigua, Victor, Geneva, Viticulture, as well as Newark, Naples, and Muller Field stations. So you can kind of see where the bulk of the work is. And at every location, we will be doing a demographic analysis, space allocation, as well as signage, IT, technology, as well as at the bottom of the program analysis and recommendations. Intermittently throughout will be the site assessment, renewable energies, building conditions documentation, and that's largely relating to whether or not the building is directly owned by the county or yourselves. So that's really the big kicker, and whether or not we deep dive into it. If it's a rented situation, we don't look at that.
Just going back, the buildings on the previous slide,
Yes.
I understand that they're relatively new, but Newark tenants in Newark, Mueller, you have that's an old home, medieval,
Correct.
built back in the early 60s.
Yes.
And George, whose last name escapes me, the homestead in Naples. No review there from a documentation standpoint? Not a priority, not something we're looking at?
Yeah, I think from an ownership standpoint, I think that would be a question, and that could be something we could fill into.
I'm just curious,
Yeah, I think that one is specifically owned by a partnership, correct?
Foundation.
Yeah, so what we ended up doing is the detail building conditions will be what we own proper. And then, as you know, we rent the other facilities, and then Naples, and then Mueller Fuel Station are by the foundation. So he will do a brief review of that in some of the descriptions and narratives. That was the intent of that.
As opposed to a deep dive on the strategy.
So the arc, so to speak, coverage would be left then to the foundation to do a deep dive.
Making recommendations to do the deeper dive.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
Following up on Steve's question, when you are documenting the conditions, are you also considering the external?
Correct.
So whatever space is available around the building?
Correct. When you say space around the building, the site, the grounds, as well as the building proper.
Right, as
Yes.
opposed to building a new building, perhaps there's an expansion of something that, I mean, are you looking at
Yes,
the external as well?
that's correct. Yeah, so we will be analyzing both. So when we talk about the physical conditions assessment, that's more, the brick and mortar, how's it holding up for you guys? Window replacements, roof replacements, mechanicals, that sort of thing. Giving you an idea, because the important part of the master plan is that you have to look at the facility, how it functions, as well as how it is holding up from an MEP and structural standpoint and so on, to make sure that the investment makes sense within the building itself. So we run both of those parallel to one another. And then we decide, from a recommendation standpoint, whether or not growth is recommended versus renovation. That answers the question.
Yeah, and let me add to that a little bit. I think in his site assessment part, one of the things that I think, we have a lot of land and a lot of beautiful land. And the Arboretum, for example, right? That's a space that some of us know about and some of us don't. So one of the things that we have talked about is in this assessment, let's look at the physical campus proper, and can we do some different things associated with that? And even the trails, our trails are beautiful, but it's a secret, right? So can we do better signage? So I think, to answer your question, the adjacency of the building, if to build out, but it's really looking at the 250 acres and really thinking about it. And adding and talking about that and really pushing the limit of traditional. I mean, could we do something, right? And I don't know what that is. That's why we hired them. I think too much like that, but, so that's a real big part of it. And we had a lot of conversation about that.
Thank you. That
Sure.
is exactly what I was
Sure.
thinking. Thank you.
And our goal is to explore opportunities to help understand what you currently have and then look for opportunities for both growth or optimization, all of the above. So it's kind of looking at it from a third party perspective, really helping you guys solve that. I will quickly go through each one of these locations, so it's just a few high level bullet points where we're at least starting from. But of course, as I mentioned, this will be a fluid process through each as we uncover and work with you guys at each location. So of course, here is obviously your largest location here. I want to focus on the middle bullet point. As I had mentioned, that fragmentation, that expansion over time. So a lot of what we will be doing is kind of rewinding the evolution of the campus to understand how it grew up, to then understand the infrastructure upgrades, the building, and then what we may recommend from a renovation and optimization standpoint. Looking at each departmental growth, that will be uncovered during each one of the focus groups. So we will meet with all the focus groups to understand typically what we classify in needs versus wants. And so we will review that with each department as well as with master plan committee to then help determine, if they have enough room for growth, if there is growth projected, and then look at whether or not where they currently reside is the optimal location, or if a relocation or expansion is, a recommendation that we have. Wayfinding and departmental identities is something that we would focus on. An example of departmental identities would be, again, terminating at each one of the departments. How do you find where you are? How do you create an identity which helps the students identify with the program and helps with retention over time? And then also looking at those formal and informal learning environments. Formal learning, certainly is captured within the rooms, but those informal is an intangible discussion on capturing, in student lounges or areas where students can identify and work together, within their departments. Specifically, we will look at the greenhouse. That was something that popped up that we will engage with the greenhouse, the usage and the integrity of it, as well as we're talking about site usage quite a bit in signage. So CMAC is obviously an interesting entity here at campus. It's atypical, as you're looking at that versus other campuses. we will really digest a lot of what is owned by CMAC, what is owned by FLCC, what is owned by the county. Let's try to look for opportunities. And from a crossover standpoint, it's going to be very important to flip the script on, what happens during a show versus what happens when FLCC is running here with peak usage and concurrently. So we have to really kind of unravel that and understand the dynamic of how everything works. And there will be opportunities as we kind of uncover both programmatic opportunities that we're excited to explore, as well as looking at opportunities for optimization, specifically looking at restaurant facilities, concessions facilities, something like that, between both facilities where all entities can benefit. And then we're, as I mentioned, growth opportunities for each entity.
So just to that point, your last point there. So each entity, meaning the college, county, and Friends of CMAC.
Correct.
And you will look into what those opportunities would grow, and maybe make some recommendations.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes out from focus groups, right? So we will be meeting with Friends of CMAC as an independent focus group, as well as everybody here, all the departments within FLCC. Then we start to understand how they all play together, what everybody's looking for. Then we unveil the needs versus the wants, and then look for those opportunities kind of in that overlap.
Does that include regional or national looks at other similar facilities that might be seasonal, as an example?
Typically, when we meet with the focus groups, they identify, things like that. We ask for comps, where are you heading? What are your objectives? What are your limitations currently? And then we look at peer institutions or we look at peer facilities. We're intimately familiar with that, having designed CMAC, the expansion there. So we understand how those venues work. The proximity here is the challenge, with the overlap with the campus. I think if you're coming here for a show, you don't realize how close to the campus you really are. And we walk around campus, how close CMAC is. So that the boundary line is very difficult and challenging now. So the Victor campus, there's a couple pushes and pulls here. It's within the fastest growing school district. It's one of the only growing school districts in our region. So that's a positive. It's a good outreach component off the get-go. However, we understand that there are increasing rental costs. So we will really be exploring the outreach component of that, whether or not having an independent tech campus makes sense, or if we should pull that back or recommend, pulling that into the campus here. So that will be an exploration on this one. Geneva campus is owned by the county. Some of these were not included in the previous master plan, so that will be a little heavier lift to bring it up to the previous master plan discussion. So in 2014, this was not included. So we will do complete documentation and then bring that up and include that in the master plan so that you have good comprehensive look at all of your facilities. We do understand the current partnerships, but we will help consider some of the potential partnerships, some that were identified for Cornell Cooperative Soil Water Conservation Society, but there may be others. And that's a discussion that will be overlapping all of the other discussions. Viticulture is a newer facility. Again, it was not included in 2014 master plan. So looking ahead 10 years from now, what items within viticulture may need to be required, maintenance upgrades, et cetera, as well as looking for curriculum expansion. So we'll uncover this a little bit more within the focus group. So one of the ideas or one of the discussion points that was thrown out there is looking at cannabis as being a growing discussion, and viticulture being a facility that may allow for that educational component. Newark is also an outreach facility.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Owned by LCC, isn't it really owned by the county?
Technically, the property is owned by the county, kept in perpetuity for the college maintains it. Kathy can speak far better than I, but that's basically, we maintain the property, but it's technically owned by the county and they hold it for us.
Right, correct, similar to Geneva and
Yeah.
Main campus.
Okay, but that says owned by LCC.
Yeah,
so
so
that's
that's,
why I was a
yeah.
little.
No, good,
Okay.
we put that in there. We passed it.
Is the building owned by FLCC and the land that sits on by the county?
I can't speak to that, I always understood it that it was the county. Rich, can you help with that?
It is owned by the county because of funding, well, not only because it was set up that way, but the funding came from Senator Mazzolio directly to the county
Yes, yeah.
for the construction.
If it had been through the foundation, it would be owned by the college. But there were funds that were used from the state, the state and from the senator to build this. And by state law, if, unless it's a foundation buys it, then the statute, state law says the county owns the property.
Yes,
And it is held in perpetuity, that's a quote,
yes.
for the college to use.
The foundation helped raise some money, we all remember that. Not enough to own it.
Now, the land that it's sitting on may still be owned by the tech.
That part, I think.
Could be a 99-year lease with the building owned by the county.
If it is, we're not paying anything.
Yes. It's one of those dollar
Get her down.
So we'll dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, I get that one.
Learn more.
Yeah.
Are you looking at cannabis, she cannabis there, and I apologize, I didn't see that in the briefing last time. At the Viticulture Center or as part of it, overall programmatic activity?
I think yes and yes is the answer to that question. We're not sure exactly if it would be there. I think that popped up in our master plan committee discussion during the discussion on viticulture. Whether or not it's there, I think it's discussion.
Okay, thanks.
It could be back towards the greenhouse.
I think it's really pushing to, let's look at what we have and what best works, or is it a joint?
So Newark, this location, we understand, is obviously detrimental, huge component of the vision of the campus from an outreach perspective. The current lease is only running through 25, 26. So we'll be looking at the future of that facility and really the engagement with FLCC moving forward. So that'll rise to the top of one of our from an outside facility standpoint. East Hills being foundational will be fully documented in the master plan as well. We will be thinking outside the box of what to do with this facility. There are lots of opportunities. We'll have to go visit it, get through some of the focus groups, and then certainly we'll report back on opportunities that we see with this facility. And then Muller Field Station as well. There was a master plan that was completed by Plan Architecture, 3 to 4 year master plan. We will review that and implement that within our master plan components that we all see that fit within it. IT infrastructure is also something at all locations, but here is a primary concern to extend the IT infrastructure to that location. So a couple of our next steps as I close from a timeline standpoint, our immediate next step is to schedule the focus groups and coordinate the number of focus groups, departments. Our target for that is in February, so we're going to work over the next couple of weeks here to schedule those. Our facility tours will be scheduled for the next couple of weeks before students return. So that'll be our next immediate step, as well as the task that we're looking forward to. Focus groups I just mentioned, student engagement, as well as continuing on the existing field documentation. Those are the next tasks. Any further questions?
So I have 3 comments to make.
Sure.
One is on the Newark slide, you mentioned that it's critical to the mission. I would assume that all of our centers are critical to our mission. So I would just ask that you would consider the language on that. I understand what you're trying to say is that Wayne County is important to us. Which brings me to my second point, which is I'd be curious to know how the master plan project will be integrating FLCC's strategic plan into its process, but also will you be integrating the strategic plan for the county? And how does that work? And I think you could talk about that.
Correct.
And then the last point I had some questions about when you talked about signage, about accessibility.
Sure. Starting with the strategic plan, we know that update is underway. We'll run parallel to our first bit of work here on the master plan. So we are aware with that. We will coordinate and it will be implemented into the master plan and our recommendations as well. So they kind of run parallel. They will bounce between one another. We're not directly involved with that effort, but we will be running parallel and coordinating quite frequently throughout.
And does the county have a strategic plan that we'll be looking at as well?
Yeah, that's a good question, but Tom Harvey is a part of the steering committee and very involved, so I'm sure he'll have a few things to add into it. And going back to the strategic plan, Deborah Ortloff is on the steering committee as well and will be a person to really help with that strategic plan, along with the focus groups. And I know that he's talked about that, and that's always a challenge to get the right people and the right groups. And Deborah has taken that on as a support for us, so we can get those people in the right place and get the groups that we really feel are important, because that really ties into the strategic plan, right? You're talking to that same type of group of people to get a better feel.
So Kathy, I mean, Chairman, guys, we have trustees on the master plan committee over yourself, Jeff, and is there a third? Just the two of you? Great.
Then you had a question on signage and accessibility.
Accessibility. So it's always dangerous to have a little bit of knowledge. So I've been to a couple of workshops on some of the innovative things that people have been doing for accessibility. Sometimes they're just very small, but they make a big difference. One community college, as they were trying to help their students through COVID, have better access outside to IT. They built ports into a stairway, which was a very creative, I thought, very innovative thing. They've done a lot of those small, but very innovative accessibility issues. They did some around lighting for everyone, but also for students who had visual impairments. So I would just ask if you are when you look at signage and accessibility issues, can we count on you to be innovative in, not necessarily spending a lot of money, but looking at those smaller opportunities to be more accessible to everyone?
Absolutely. That's part of, so the facilities assessment, we do look at accessibility from the campus, as soon as you're on campus, going in the front door through the site and navigating around the facility. And then within the classroom proper, we've done several projects designing for the deaf. We do a lot of that at RIT, and we've learned through that process that a lot of the design elements that we do there apply to classroom technology in general. Color temperature of light, projector intensity, AV and IT controls, acoustics, all those things are kind of in the back of our minds. We will make recommendations there. It could be pricey to obviously update every classroom that way, but there are very small nuances. Paint color is one small nuance that eases the eye and helps with retaining student focus. So we will make recommendations like that, throughout, based on our expertise in other projects. But accessibility is something we take very seriously and kind of root throughout.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's early in the process, but have you, in the process of scheduling a full presentation to the board of supervisors as opposed to just the two steering committees?
We have not scheduled that yet. It is anticipated, but we are very early on.
Let's move from anticipation to highly recommend.
Yeah, of course.
And then the second question I had for you is, if you go back to Geneva campus, you make a reference to the Conservation Society. Is that the same thing as the Ontario County Soil and Water Conservation District?
Yes.
Okay. Have they been contacted, and are they in the loop to be part of this process?
I can speak to that, and I think Jerry added that from the steering committee on the 19th.
Correct.
Correct, and that was something that Tom Harvey did talk about, and trying to get them in to really see if there is an opportunity, instead of them building a new building, et cetera, to get some type of a collaboration.
Mhm.
So yes, that will be a part of it. We have not made the contact yet.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Just about Don and Rich's points here, at what time budget dollars looked at in this process, do you apply dollars to this plan, if you will?
So typically what we'll do is get through that first series of project focus points. So if we're looking at this November to March range, all of that scope on the left, and we have to push side, the dollar cost off the get-go to understand and unravel like what we're up against and all the information that we're looking at. Once we get to that April timeframe, we will make our initial discussion points, initial recommendations purely based on the facts and findings, and then recommendations that we're going to make at that point. Between that April and August timeframe, that's when, dollars hit the road. Some of it will be common sense that will guide us throughout based on recommendations. However, the analysis of the impact of those recommendations will kind of happen in that time. So before it makes it into that complete draft report, that draft report in August will have costs associated with it. And typically that cost matrix is, here are all the recommendations, here are the costs in today's dollars, but we obviously know that inflation has hit us pretty hard the last several years. We have some anticipation of what inflation will look like, but we project out priority levels, typically in 3 levels over the next, 5, 10 years plus. And then we'll apply inflation for each one of those, just so you guys can get a feel for if a project is pushed from priority 1 to priority 2, what does that cost? And obviously these are today's dollars and projections, but it gives you a rough magnitude of what those decisions are. And that's how this becomes a tool for you guys. That's a working, tool for you as you kind of look at it and understand, the implications of the decisions being made.
And Jerry, you are bringing in an outside
Yes,
construction manager,
Yeah.
which I believe is.
we have pipe construction.
Yeah, so they're bringing in a third party that does it every day and has a much better feel, because as we know, it's so dynamic out there. We can't, they're not going to get the right numbers. So we've asked them, and Pike is a part of their team, to be able to put those construction dollars together.
Pike allocates a lot of resources looking at futures as well. So from a master planning standpoint, they really look at projections. They publish projections, their analysis of the market conditions. So we like using them from a master planning perspective. For that reason, it really helps us understand, what we're recommending.
Just one final. I'm exposed to a couple other organizations going through facilities and master planning. And the overlay of climate change, our warming planet. Where is this in this particular proposal in your planning process?
So we will be looking at energy modeling specifically. So the first step is obviously understanding, how the building functions currently, what it would take to maintain the building. From there, we have a lot of state requirements, electrification requirements, as well as other state mandates. As we're looking forward to new equipment and updating of equipment. And then from there, we look at the energy analysis and recommendations based on efficiency. So that's kind of all in parallel. It happens within the energy modeling and energy analysis portion of the master plan.
Is Bella doing that with other projects and so forth, looking at the impact of climate change?
Yeah, we are. Hudson Valley Community College, we did a complete analysis of their current infrastructure in Albany there, and we looked at how they're functioning today and exactly what I just stated. Projecting outward, equipment for them, understanding whether or not they should go geothermal and other, other sustainable avenues. And then really helping, getting back to the budget discussion, the ROI on this. There's a lot of things out there that are great from a marketing perspective, but really don't pan out from a cost perspective. And then that's obviously heavy climate dependent. We did the same thing with Stanley Community College down in Charlotte, which is a very different climate from us. So that changed, our perspective, looking at the facility and then looking at the sustainability aspects.
Thank you.
Jerry, you had mentioned that you're very big on the graphics
Yes.
portion of this, which I appreciate. Can you explain a little bit about that? Does it have what if scenarios available in it? Like if you present this, but then there's other feedback, can you easily rearrange things so that you can see, well, if you have this scenario or if you have this scenario?
Yeah, so a couple that I would point to, this is just a small snippet of, what we've been doing in the upper right with Stanley Community College. We did look at that from a plan perspective, and that was a priority analysis. A lot of those were what if scenarios in terms of new loop road discussion, safety and security on their loop road, as well as additions and renovations to buildings, and trying to think of that sequencing. The bottom there is Cupid College when they were looking at doing an administrative master plan to optimize their facilities, also looking to do a one-stop shop. And we were thinking of all the scenarios. That was one high-level diagram, but there were several others of each departmental move and what that meant. It's a shell game, as we understand. If one moves, then there's space available and so on. So we do look at that. A lot of it does ripple effect from one to the other. So if you pull one cog out, it doesn't quite work. So there are some scenarios that are analyzed, but in terms of recommendations, we would look to try to land on the most, fluid recommendation as opposed to too many matrix that would be a little difficult to use, I guess, in the future. But we would work through those. And then graphic wise, we try to use the graphics to try to illustrate, the move and the dynamics of the master plan recommendations.
Let me add a little bit to the climate change question. It's not only looking at the existing HVAC systems within it, but what we're also seeing is the design data and what they're designed to. The temperatures are different, right? It's hotter, it's more humid. So it really not only looks at the energy efficiency, but we have to look at what's that outside air coming in. It's different. The design data that I designed to 20 years ago is different now. It's a much higher humid, and we have a lot more where it's hotter for a long period of time, as we all has lived through that. That's a part of the climate change. And the other thing I want to mention, and I know that we've talked about this, is the amount of the stormwater management, right? The amount of rain that comes in compared to when it was designed, the 100-year storm, et cetera. The outside is also a big part of that. The roof drains, all of those have a huge effect on design where it is to now pertaining to climate change. And part of that is integral to what they're doing now, because everything is quietly, slowly changing compared to 20 years ago. Some of those criteria are changing, but that will be integrated in a lot of that discussion. And where we are here, as we know, the storm management is a challenge. And it's a challenge when we go into the beautiful lake that we have, right? So we have to think about it associated with that water flow and the chemicals. We can go on and on and on, but I think to open it up, it's not just that, but I think it's a much bigger area of what we need to look at. And I think that's what you were alluding to, Steve. I think we need to look bigger.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? It's very thorough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, I would appreciate a motion to adjourn this meeting. Donna, thank you. A second. Nita, thank you. All in favor? Madam Chair.
All right, seeing that we're done with education and planning, we will move on to the agenda for the finance and facilities, and Trustee Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. Call to order the meeting of January 4th, 2023 at 5:28 p.m. of the Finance and Facilities Committee. A review of the December 7th, 2022 committee minutes. Any changes, questions, comments? I think Penny did a nice job of capturing everything. Thank you for that. Seeing or hearing none, we'll move on to Ken, budget update and the finance report. Well,
Slide to show. Okay. Just walk us through it. Operationally, we're in the same spot that we were back in October results. Revenue was holding to budget. We budgeted a decline, small decline in revenue, and that's we're experiencing that. And we're also, but we're positive to plan on labor. And that's something that we've seen, and it's expected to continue throughout the rest of the year. We budgeted for full employment, and we are not at full employment. And so I'm still projecting we budgeted for a loss this year, like close to $1.8 million, and I'm expecting it would be at the moment still coming in at half of that from a loss standpoint, because of this delay in employment that we're experiencing. So that would be yours. That would be it. Yeah. So effectively no change here. You can see that applied fund balance there. We have it.
I know, I gotta share it.
Ready to move on.
Like magic here, it's gonna show up.
I know we have these in our packets and
Yes,
everything.
you're looking at
Any
there.
questions of Ken?
There's nothing, what I want to move to is sort of an update on where we are on the audit. And next, very briefly. So that's what you have in your package. Nothing, sorry, restate. Nothing new, nothing unexpected there, year-to-date wise. I want to move us to the next, unless there's questions, to the next slide anyways. But
There.
I want to move us to the next slide. That has to do with the capitalized leases. But before I get that, we're expecting to present to you the audited financial reports on the March 1st board meeting. February 1st can be a little too quick for us, because we do the next slide. February 1st too quick for us, but we're actively working. We don't see any hiccups at the moment in the audit. So that's moving ahead. Good news there. The new audit regulations have us capitalizing leases, and in your packet, you received a little summary of what those capitalized leases are that were up there. As we were having the discussion, I was trying to take a look to see where the cultural lease is, and of course, it's not on the list. But we'll be putting on the books at the end of the 2022 year, $6.9 million worth of new assets on our books representing leased facilities. Most of that is the Victor facility and the Newark facility. We will also be putting a liability on for that amount on the liability section. And that's the whole goal of this new regulations, is to show the liabilities and the assets. So they're going to come on, it's going to be basically a neutral effect for us, but it's going to show some assets. Yep, second one down from the top. Yep. Let's hope that works. So these are the leases that we're going to be putting on the balance sheet at the end of the year. You see Victor, and you can see how much amortization, if you will, is taking place year to year on those leased assets. Over $1 million.
And you said, so you said new, it's new because of the new.
Because of the new regulation.
Gotcha.
These are not new leases for us. If you look at the next slide, that should be right on there. So one more other one. Yep. Here's the expenses, and what's happening is, we used to call it rent. I'm using these terms loosely, but the auditors are going to have us split these expenses into interest and principal, basically. Lease expense and interest expense. That's all that's happening. It's going to be a slight change in classification, but it's just moving from one category to the other. It's no substantive changes in our books.
What's the motivation for breaking out the interest expense?
I think it's more, the concept is we're doing a net present value calculation of the lease. That's what's going on the books. And then as over time, we're showing it as interest and principal. So it's kind of that's what's being reflected there.
Do you envision future net present value?
Every year we'll be doing a net present value calculation of these items.
And depreciation, you think I said last time, is just straight line?
And these items will not be depreciated.
It will not.
No, but what we'll be doing is, instead of depreciation, we'll be showing these lease expenses and interest expenses.
So not even the vehicles.
That's correct. Unless we purchase these, this is how we'll show it. We'll be showing lease expense instead of depreciation. Interesting. Your point is a good one, which is this building that we're in here, the depreciation really not showing up.
And for at least my benefit, maybe others, what is RICO?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's our copiers.
Oh, okay.
Multifunction printers, things like that. We have a big lease program with a 3-year lease, and 3-year, 3-year payments on those.
And just for clarification,
Yep.
it wasn't in the packet, it was an additional document.
Okay.
I support trustees.
Fair enough. An additional package that we received. I think I have one more slide too, which maybe I should have put in there, but this is kind of what the big picture looks like for our assets and our liabilities. See, $112 million worth of assets. And then this
$22 million worth of liabilities. And we'll be raising both of those numbers by about 7 million. To add the assets and the liabilities to the time period. The other thing I wanted to mention though today and was, if you remember, the auditors were talking about a 1-year presentation of results versus a 2-year presentation of results. This is actually comes from our audited financial statements, and they look at, we have 2 years of detailed numbers, kind of like I showed you earlier. And then they have, so we have 2 years, and then they have some summary pages that look at sort of like this forecast, this trend over time. And what they're suggesting that we do, and it appears to be an industry move, is basically to drop 1 year out of the presentation. So in the case of the summary, we would be dropping that column on the right, of course, updated. And in the detail, dropping the extra detail. So the detailed financial reports will only have 1 year's worth of data rather than 2 years worth of data. And that is a proposal that they've made a couple times ago, and which I am advocating just for simplicity. Nobody, these financial restatements are not really being actively used. They're being filed with the bank, and they're being filed in various places, but SUNY is not asking for, no one's asking for the additional year, and I'm suggesting we just take the recommendation to drop it off.
Questions?
Yep.
Question. I guess I have just two. There's pretty big difference between the non-current liabilities from 2021. Maybe you could. That's a big
That's a great question, which I can't answer. I have to answer that one.
And the inverse is the deferred flow of resources there from 21 to 20.
That's, well, those, yeah.
And don't need it now.
I shouldn't share something if I can't explain it.
That's fine. There's some big disparities there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there is, and that's a great question. I would anticipate what it is, but no, I'm not going to.
Okay.
I think those are book assets. That would be, that would be aid that's expected to be coming in. That's why it's a deferred, it's like book, but not received, like a receivable probably for the federal stimulus money.
The monies you got, yeah,
Student
things like that.
monies, those types of things. But the real question that we should be asking ourselves is why it looks like it's flipped different categories. It looks like it's gone from non-current to deferred inflows. Why is that? It looks like it's being treated differently. We know last year we did increase our deferred revenue. We had a lot of federal aid that we were expecting hadn't been received yet. We booked it. I'm sure that's what that is, but I'll give you a better answer.
Appreciate the transparency.
Good question.
Yeah, thanks.
And, sorry about that.
Final question for Ken. Thank you.
Yep.
Next, you can stay right up here.
Yeah.
We have a resolution with regard to Ontario County providing some purchasing services.
That is our annual renewal for purchasing that takes place that the county does for us. The number, I don't remember, $60,000, I think, something like that, of county provided services, purchasing services. Stand by for seconds.
Question? Thank you, Ken.
Yep.
We'll welcome Matthew McGrath to the podium. This is a resolution with regard to the proposed purchase of patrol rifles. So, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. This is the resolution that was in your packet, was presented in December for first read and public comment, and now at this time we're putting it forward for board approval. Resolution is for the purchase of patrol rifles for the protection of campus safety and in support of campus police. Whereas a request for the president of the Finger Lakes Community College to approve the purchase and issuance of 2 patrol rifles and related equipment for the FLCC campus police at a cost not to exceed $6,500 is authorized under New York State Education Law 6306.5A to improve the department's ability to provide a rapid and effective initial response to a threat armed with a long gun. And whereas FLCC maintains a unique position in the community as a venue of choice for educational, athletic, and entertainment events in the region. Several hundred people also work at FLCC each day. The very attributes that make such an appealing place for the community also make it a vulnerable place for a threat of violence resulting in mass casualties. And whereas FLCC campus police officers provide the first law enforcement response to a violent incident on college property, having access to and training in the rapid and proper use of a patrol rifle will significantly mitigate, but not eliminate, the risks of containing or neutralizing a threat that is armed with a long gun. Anticipating and planning responses to violence on campus are critical responsibilities of the FLCC Campus Police Department. A proactive approach to the safety of college community involves anticipating that violent situations will happen and assesses the readiness of those who will respond when it does. And whereas campus police are presently equipped, have a tactical disadvantage in responding to a threat armed with a long gun and would have to consider much riskier and time-consuming approaches to be within the range for their pistols to be effective. FLCC officers may have to direct officers with rifles from off campus to the location of an assailant armed with a long gun, adding time to the response that would result in more casualties. That concludes the reading of the resolution, and I would like to know if you have any questions.
Questions? Yes. Yeah. Doctor?
Okay. Are we setting ourselves up because this says threat armed with a long gun? Could there be any other opportunities out there outside of just a long gun where these rifles would be needed? Because the long gun, threat with a long gun is on here repeatedly. And I'm just wondering if we're limiting ourselves to just that.
Because of the distance that someone may have if they possess a long gun and they're trying to assail the campus, our long gun would be much more effective tool. So that's why I say there's so much.
Yep.
It doesn't limit taking care of other threats as well.
All right.
But there are other threats that may be more closer in proximity to us, such as a night threat.
Right.
Something like that.
But see, when I read this, I just read with a long gun. Does anyone else read it like that? Or am I just being too nitty gritty about this? I just don't want to.
I thought it was because it was for the purchase of a
Yeah.
long gun, that's why it was so specific.
Okay.
The threat that brings this about is that the primary threat is the threat of other long rifles
Yep.
and not having the same capability to counter the threat.
Yeah. No, I understand that, but because this says, threat with a long gun, threat with a long gun, what if it is someone with a knife? Can we still use the rifle because it's with a knife and not with a long gun that is in this resolution?
You ought to address that. There's a level of that.
And I don't mean to be nitty gritty about this. It's just, I don't want to set ourselves up because the resolution says, I don't know if there's any way to reword that to encompass more than just the long gun.
There's a graduation of force, a use of force that comes along. This was specifically designed for that.
Right.
You don't necessarily going to use a rifle against a knife. So there, and I do believe you're getting nitty gritty because there are so many scenarios that are out there. And the main purpose for doing this was to help counter a higher level threat than what our officers currently have. And there is an importance in terms of graduation force. Matt, you can talk about it better than I can.
Yeah, the premise is the Article 35 of the penal law for justification for use of deadly physical force. So we wouldn't start off with a long gun for every single event we would have. We would start off with physical presence, maybe some hands-on type of techniques, batons, pepper spray, things like that. It elevates to the level maybe of that long gun. But the long gun is meant to meet specifically threat of a long gun because that's the most dangerous threat we could have. So I don't think we're pinning ourselves in at all. We're all trained in the full use force for all the different tools we have.
I'm just concerned with the actual verbiage itself, but I'm okay.
Jeff, you had your hand up.
I just had one question, and that is, the cost of this is all on ourselves, right? We're not seeking reimbursement for anybody for part of this cost or any of that? It's on our dime, what I'm asking.
Yes.
6,500. Other questions, comments? I do, and certainly no secret that when we even address firearms and arming our own campus security way back when, I was not a proponent or supportive. I still don't support that in terms of arming our security force with firearms, and frankly, a very great trepidation here and some reluctance, and not convinced, having read through your proposal, knowing that the troopers, the sheriff, and the city police all have these long rifles, and they are equipped, and their response time seemed to be quite reasonable. But having stated this, I'm ultimately going to support the proposal because of the president. I trust our president. I trust his judgment. I trust his recommendation. So just wanted that to be part of the record, and as it was 6, 7, 8 years ago when we addressed this on campus. So those are my thoughts. Welcome any final comments anyone has. We'll ultimately take this and see it's underneath consent, part of our consent agenda. We'll take the resolution there. Okay. Comments from trustees? Yeah.
My only comment is a question. Have you received any additional information or comments or input that from the community, internal or external, that the board should know about?
We have received a total of 5 letters of support from law enforcement agencies in the area. The Ontario County Sheriff's Department, the Newark Police Department, the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, and the Geneva Police Department as well. I'm missing one. But there was 5 altogether. So we did receive letters of support from them. I know I have personally been approached in the hall several times on the campus from people, instructors that are faculty that are in favor of the proposal.
Anything negative that we should be aware of?
You know, this is Chairman Martin. I mean, it's expressed, other than that, I've had pretty much an overwhelming experience talking to different people, having, you know, watched the previous trustees meeting. And was approached myself by multiple different faculty staff members saying that they were in full support of it as well. So, I think over the years, we've really pushed out, room hide fight training. And when they see that training, I mean, it's a fairly short video, but when they see other colleges, I believe that one was hosted out of Washington University, but I may be incorrect in that. They see other colleges, campus police responding with long guns. They're asking us the same question, well, why aren't you? That's a hard question to answer. It's because we don't have them.
Thank you.
To address the question.
Chairperson Holler, also, part of the reason that this was done this way and we had a second read was addressing this issue with the governance executive committee, which consists of the college council chair, academic senate chair, and union representatives and student corporation president. And so having a second read on this was part of their input. And after we had our discussion last month, we had an additional discussion in the governance exec. I asked again for if there were any comments back from the constituencies of the college, and they didn't have any to provide them.
Thank you.
Final comments? Okay, we'll move on. Thanks very much for
Thank you.
your presentation. We'll welcome Ken back. You can just stand up in your spot right there if you will, since we have a couple of informational items.
Sprinkler bid renewal, working final renewal. This, the other, the thing that's informational, that come later,
was a $2,000 transfer in on a budget line item for, part-time. I don't know if they're very at one of the departments, small transfer.
Questions, Karen? Thank you very much. Any other business coming from the finance committee? All righty, entertain a motion at 5:50 to adjourn the finance facilities. So moved by Barb, second by Rich. All in favor? Chairman Geis.
All right, thank you very much, Trustee Martin. Why don't we take, I'm gonna give you a real generous break tonight because we'll only be 15 minutes late if we go to 6:15, starting the regular meeting. So I will give everybody a break until 6:15. Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
That's good.
Good evening. I'd like to open up the FLCC Board of Trustees meeting for January 4th, 2023. The first item on the agenda will be the community participation. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the board at this time? All right, seeing no one, I will move on to the consent agenda in the minutes. We will take these as a block, if that is all right with everyone. So I will ask for someone to please put this on the table. George, trustee Cushman and trustees Axel, second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposition? All right, thank you. The consent agenda passes. I have no old business. Does anybody else have any old business that they would like to bring up? Yes.
Jen, I just have a question. Based on the presentations today, I just was wondering, will we be doing the, what we're calling it, the funds we've set aside for innovation grants?
Question.
Can you repeat?
The money that is set aside for the mini grants.
The strategic fund grant, right? Are we, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Will those be coming to the board for us to review and?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we still need to discuss, you're talking about for the new plan too, correct?
Right, I'm not sure what that timeline is.
So our new strategic plan will be done this, by the end of spring. So it would be using for those funds for starting sometime next year. But one of the things we talked about is the board, we need to talk about discussing the parameters of what the grants would be, what categories or what the parameters are for submitting for grants.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything, something.
Oh.
Anybody else, old business? New business? Any questions, comments, anything anybody would like to bring to the floor? Chair's report. I have nothing at this time, but some of you were given various reading material. So I will assume everybody will read it. And some of you got the magazine, The Trustee, because there were some articles in there that were pertinent to your particular communities, like Santa and Don. Okay.
Are sharing those?
Yeah.
And if you don't, if you would not mind bringing those back the next meeting, then we can circulate them. Okay, thank you. Sure. All right, any other new business? Or there's another report for me. Dr. Nye?
Thank you. First, in terms, I just want to highlight a few things. In my key personal update, there's one important one that's not there because it hadn't occurred when I had written it up, and I'm very sad to have announced that Michelle Flojak was going to be leaving us. That we submitted, and I think it's very important for us to acknowledge the wonderful work that Michelle has done, and hopefully with the approval of the board, because we didn't quite have enough time because of the holiday period, that we can have a resolution for the next one to acknowledge the wonderful work that Michelle has spent in college, and we'll miss her, and hope that the board will give her a good send off here in terms of the wonderful work that she's done. So Michelle, thank you so much for everything you've done for FLCC. Second, just quick updates. I'll be making a decision soon about the CFO search, and then also Ed Kelly here is involved with the leading search for the provost, and they are off to a wonderful start. with a number significant, I wouldn't say significant, but about 25 individuals so far have applied to the position. And we're screening there. So it's good. They're helping with the screen. And we hope for a great provost to join us too. I wanted to highlight something that's important when we talk about cooperation and collaboration with the county. We're working to have the Ontario County Law Enforcement Academy conduct their activities here at the college, rather than where they're at in one of the county buildings, other than their tactical operations. And we're in discussions with them now in terms of their needs and how we might be able to do that. That's helpful, not just for collaboration, but also hopefully we can bring a number of those graduates into our criminal justice program as well. And I wanted to highlight that a good decision, long overdue, to increase the amount of financial encumbrances that students have and not being allowed to register, increasing from $50 to $500. It was long overdue. I'm thankful for the persistence of Dr. Urbatus and others to help us be able to do that. I think that's important to support our students. Now, on the flip side, with everything, it also means that there's potential down the road, if you can remember this, increased bad debt for things. But we were doing things for the right reason, which is to find the appropriate amount where we want to give people a chance to be able to continue their academic studies and help transform lives, which is what we do. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nye.
Question?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Under workforce development, Dr. Nye, the first bullet is Seneca and Wayne County have requested renewal of office of Children and Family Services for grants, for employee training. Does Ontario County participate in that?
To my knowledge, historically in the past, they have not, but it's something that we can pursue.
Let's, the two of us move on that quickly.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments for Dr. Nye? Committee reports. First one will be Trustee Schumacher.
I do not have a report for this month's meeting, but I would like to share an observation. On the last day of classes, I came into the cafe to sit down with some of my peers, and the Polar Express was playing in the cafeteria, and there's hot chocolate being served. And if you're familiar with the Polar Express, there's a scene where the conductor starts singing hot, hot, hot chocolate. And the majority of the cafe stood up and all started singing and dancing together. And it's just the little things like that. I know you guys don't get to see that on the daily, but I just wanted to share that with you. It makes our campus really beautiful that our students come together and are joyful, especially around the holidays. It's quite lovely, especially on the last day of finals.
That was a very good report. Trustees Essels, anything on ARM? Board development. Trustees Abraham and Mahalik.
We have set up a meeting for next Friday afternoon to regroup and review where we were and how we're going to move forward.
Okay. Very good, thank you very much. FLCC Association. Trustee Cass is not here this evening. His wife broke her ankle and is having surgery today. And so I didn't see her. I am, right. And Trustee Hamlin is just getting over her knee surgery, so we did not attend the meeting either, but I'm sure we'll have something next month.
There's a recording.
Pardon me?
There was a report.
There is.
It's the last document,
The very last?
page 85 and 86.
Submitted by Comcast.
Yes.
November, January 4th.
Did I miss it?
Gotta go all the way to the bottom.
I probably did. It's on the very last page. I'm sorry, I did miss it.
Page you.
Okay. And there's a report on upcoming programs at the suites and, okay, housing. All right, I'm very, chapter, I'm sorry. I missed the whole thing. Did everybody else get a chance to read it? Okay, any questions? Um,
And then I just like a copy of the laundry facts to unpack it.
Yes.
I'd love a copy of the laundry facts to unpack. That sounds
There's a lot.
terribly important.
Well, I guess if you're living there, it would be important. Foundation, Louis will have more numbers for us, the next meeting, but he said we had a very good, December for the foundation. And also there are still tickets available for Vintners and Valentine's. So if you're interested, they're probably not a lot.
Yeah, I would suggest if you'd like to attend,
They go quick. And, NYCCT, Trustee Mahalik.
But George probably has more to report on than I do at this point. But I did want to say, in my defense of not having another report, for you about the conferences that I attended, I did actually produce this newsletter, so it came in the, as an email, but we're not sure that everybody gets or opens their email. And so my question to you is, if you take a look at this, do you find it valuable or not valuable? Would you like to have more things sent to you via the statewide organization or not? I just like your.
I personally prefer this type of material.
Agreed.
Yeah, we do. Okay. So I had to do a little convincing. But I think the budget is there that we can afford to send packets to each of the colleges. It's only 30 colleges. Okay, so thank you very much. I appreciate that. And George, did you have any?
We're in the process of meeting with Governor's Office, the Budget Office, various representatives and so forth. I can't say it's, everybody's like really excited about increasing. So it's the usual, they're all hedging and, but it's a long process and actually it's a multi-year process. You know, you really can't think of it just as in this year. So it's moving along. I think one of the question that comes back most often is, your number of students is going down, why should you fund go up? And there are very good reasons for that. Especially in that it's starved for a decade or at least the decade I'm looking at. So, you know, it's just perception issues and it's a challenge to, but what's really good is we're together with the presidents or arm in arm in front of them with the exact same message. So.
do you have access to the chancellor as well? Chancellor?
The chancellor is just getting started. I think the chancellor just started or is starting next Tuesday or something like this Tuesday or next.
He started, but officially starts, I think it's this week,
Yeah,
but he's been on the job for the last month.
I understand he's been calling all the presidents. Have you gotten a call?
I did.
And I understand that those have been very good conversations.
It was helpful. I can't say that one comment I made, but I asked him, he asked about what are your concerns or challenges. The one I brought up was sitting online and that we're missing an opportunity. So, I think, he has an appreciation from what I've been told from others for community colleges and, will hopefully be helpful in the long run.
And NYCCT has planned in the works to send a welcome letter from our organization and to invite them to our conferences so that we can start that relationship building at the state level.
We have our first president's meeting with them Monday. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, student court, Trustee Cushman.
I also have nothing. I had two other meetings to report on last month, so I have none this month.
Did they even, will they even meet in January? I didn't think so. Okay,
I'm not sure I needed, you know.
it's like
I
so,
don't think so.
right, I didn't think so. Any other announcements that anyone would like to make? No announcements. All right, then I will ask for a motion to move into executive session to discuss. I'm sorry.
Go
pardon
ahead,
me.
you can read it first, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you
Steve.
go ahead, you can read the motion.
Oh, okay. To discuss matters regarding the employment history of a particular person or matters leading to the employment. And this is section 105F. Can I have a motion to move into executive session?
Go ahead, Barb.
Steve moves and I second.
Second, okay. All right, we will go into executive session and then return to regular